Welcome to Culture Yapfest, an unserious podcast for serious fans. I am Skullie, a fandom girly who loves to chat her shit.
And I'm Earth, a cosplayer who spends way too much time in the library. And let's get yapping.
Yes, we have a lot to yap about today. Very culturally relevant, very important for the times that we're living in. We're going to be talking about media lovers against complacency, and we're going to dive deep into this. But I want to know what's been going on with you recently because have you been watching Arcane?
Yes, I watched the first 2 episodes of the new season, and I promptly realized that I really need to go back and watch all of season 1 because
Yeah.
it's been a minute since I've seen it, and there's so much, like, they basically just hit the ground running, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, there are plot details that I forgot about. So I need to go back and refresh my memory, but it's so good. Arcane is doing something that I feel like a lot of animation it is sort of just like dipping its toe into the water of doing, and I feel like Arcane, it's so great. I'm a big fan.
It is so
Have you been?
so we preemptively, because we were like, it's been years. So it was me, Shem, and our friend Taylor who like turned us onto the show in the first place. We did like a watch party for like before season 2 dropped of season 1.
Smart. That was so smart. I should have done that.
And it was great. Loved it. Loved to like get reacquainted. And but the issue is I'm so feral and so fucking hungry when each new drop happens. So the first 3, the act 1, basically the first 3 episodes of Arcane, because Arcane drops in 3 acts. There's 9 episodes per season. So first 3 episodes, the first act, second 3 episodes, second act, etc., etc. First 3 episodes dropped. Watch them immediately. Second 3 episodes dropped last night. We like marathoned through, and we watched all of them one after another. And my friend Taylor, who like works at like a school, and he does like overnights. He had like an overnight, so like every like 15 minutes he would have to like get up and like do a round, and he was like, all right, we gotta wait
Oh
15
my
minutes to
God.
come back. It was a nightmare, but it was so worth it. Tacking on to what you said about like Arcane doing the thing that many shows try to dip their toe into doing, I couldn't agree more. It is so unabashed in what it is trying to do in like showcasing the complexities of power and privilege and class war, and like it's so good. It's so good, and like animation's beautiful. The actors that are involved are incredibly talented. The music is fun. I know the Imagine Dragons cell is like a lot. There's sometimes where I'm like, "Ugh, we don't need another Imagine Dragons song here." Like but the music this season I feel like is really, really good. I like
Yeah,
the
there's a
music
lot
this
of
season.
variety.
Yeah.
They sort of branched out a little bit. Also, like, I feel I feel very much that the Imagine Dragons muchness in the music is really like suited to the world of Arcane in a way that I'm
That's
like, I don't know that I would pick another imagined world for Imagine
yeah.
Dragons.
Yeah. It's
So, they have their niche.
They definitely have their niche for sure. I think it's in the first few episodes, but the song Sucker has like been replaying constantly on all my playlists, and in my head I've been singing it constantly. It's so good. It's like one of like Jinx's like walkabout songs where she's being all
Yeah.
angsty and like
That whole sequence, but I wanna talk about it, but I feel like it's way too early to talk about it
yeah,
because people might not have had a chance to see it yet, but
yeah.
that sequence is particularly good. There are things about it that I think are really good that I'll go into, like, ad nauseum once it's
Yeah.
been a little bit more time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. And I've seen like it's so funny too because now that season 2 has come out, people are like either revisiting season 1, or people that haven't started the show like have started season 1 and are like getting into the older like some of the characters that like were in season 1 but like maybe aren't in season 2 anymore. And it's just the revitalization. Arcane has such a rich fandom too, and, like, I mean, we could
Mhm.
we are, like, planning on doing an Arcane episode in the future, but just to briefly touch on this before we move on, like, Arcane has such a rich fandom as well, like, the editors the editors are artists in the Arcane fandom.
Yes.
They work hard, they work fast, and the shit they make is so fucking quality, like, it is such a privilege too, because I feel like I've been in some fandoms either because it's, like, either one of 2 ends of it, where it's either a super popular show where people are participating in fandom when they haven't before, so, like, maybe the edits aren't as good, or it's,
Right.
like, a super niche fandom where there's just a limited amount of, like, fandom editors, but Arcane is, like, the weird kids, the theater kids, TM, like,
Yeah.
brand, so, all of
Yeah.
the edits are, like,
It
so
hits
good.
it hits the middle of that cultural Venn diagram
Yeah.
where it's the kind of fandom that appeals to people from a lot of different walks of fandom life.
Mhm.
And so like the cultural production going on there is really, really fantastic. It's also cool because like Arcane itself is sort of like really expensive fan fiction of League of Legends in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. You know,
Yeah.
like it in and of itself as a TV show is a transformed work from the video game League of Legends with which it shares, you know, some aesthetic and thematic similarities, but I would argue very, very different energies. Like the Arcane
Yeah.
fandom is not the same people who obsessively play League of Legends, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering like who the middle of those people are because it's not me. I don't play League of Legends. League of Legends is a video game with which I have a personal vendetta, and we'll get into that when we talk about Arcane more in depth. But like, it feels it's kind of an interesting it's an interesting artifact
Yeah.
because it brings together a lot of people who like lots of different kinds of media, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very diverse, it's very queer, and it also talks
Yeah.
on, like, race and, like, racial politics, and, like, it's very nuanced. I love it, and, the one thing that I really, really love about Arcane, and we're seeing more of it in season 2, is, like, it really and one of my mutuals has talked about this as well, where it's, like, it really pushes you to the edge of, like, how far are you willing to go to defend a character? How
Yeah.
far are you willing to go? Like, how many bad things is a character going to do before you stop defending them? And very much, I think,
Yeah.
like, mirrors, like, real life of, like, okay, how many atrocities can X person commit? How many atrocities can X government commit before you stop defending them? And obviously, like,
Mhm.
Arcane is fiction. None of the people that have been hurt in Arcane are real and therefore can be examined with, I think, a more critical, cold lens than versus like real life, but it does offer up like a really important conversation of like, yeah, anyone has the capacity to kind of like be bad, to turn bad, or
Yes.
to do really bad things. Even people that we
Yes.
think have good qualities or people that we like. Like, it's so good. I
Yeah.
yeah, if you haven't watched it, watch
Well,
Arcane.
and it
It's great.
it yeah, watch Arcane and it does a really good job of like making it clear that like people don't just one day wake up and decide to commit.
Mm,
It's usually as a result of like deeply entrenched structural violence.
yeah. Or
And
propaganda
Arcane,
or yeah.
yes, which is a form of structural violence. It's the end result of structural violence, you know? And Arcane does a really good job of showing like how violence begets more violence in a complicated stratified society with a lot of systems and structures. Like ours.
Like
So that's
ours.
pretty cool. That's pretty neat. Yeah, watch
Yeah.
Arcane.
I love it.
So I had two other little morsels, little goodies from this week that I wanted to talk about
Go
before we
for it.
move on to our serious corner.
Go
Um,
for it.
okay, so thing number one is that the Stardew Valley 1.6 update is now out on console, and it's been getting me through the week. Have you ever played Stardew Valley, Scully?
I have not played Stardew Valley, but I played a game on Nintendo DS called Harvest Moon, which was
Yes.
like I don't know which came first, chicken or egg, Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, but
Harvest Moon came first.
okay.
Harvest Moon came first. Harvest Moon, in a lot of ways, is sort of like the blueprint for the cozy games that are like the let's focus on our land and our community and our sort of safety and fulfillment needs. And so, out of the Harvest Moons of the world, which is I believe a Japanese made video game,
Mhm.
you get American indie games like Stardew Valley,
Yeah.
which have become these like unprecedented mega blockbuster hits. And it's a great game. If you like the farming sim thing, it's kind of the template. I've been playing it a lot. It's been very calming. I'm doing more this playthrough to explore my relationships with all the other people in the town, and I'm discovering about like all their secrets and their passions and the things that make them sad. And I didn't do that at all my first playthrough. I was like, okay, there's this one hottie in town. I'm gonna marry her and I'm gonna forget about all these other people. And that's exactly what I did. Shout out to Leah, my OG wife.
I love that.
But I'm keeping my options open this time.
Ooh!
I don't know who my character is gonna end up with this time. But I'm enjoying. Shockingly, I'm really enjoying Sebastian this playthrough. Which if you had
I feel
asked
like
me that a month ago,
yeah.
never would have happened in a million years. But he's he's doing his own thing, and I appreciate that about him.
I feel like he's super popular. I feel like every time Stardew Valley comes up in conversation, it's like Sebastian and I think like Elliot, who I think are like the two
Yeah.
like low key like deadbeat guys. Like Elliot's like a writer,
Oh,
right? And
Elliot's a
then
writer. There's a lot of deadbeatery in the Stardew Valley men. Honestly, it makes them feel very unattractive to me. And the
yeah.
thing that I realized about Sebastian that makes him attractive is he actually does have a job. He has a job as a web developer.
Love.
And nobody understands because it's this little town. And so he's like, I've the whole time I've been playing this game, I've been wondering to myself, like, what is this man? Like, why is he shut in his room all day and he's not outside? I don't understand. And now I get it. It's because he's in his room doing his job.
Oh my god.
he's,
That's
he's
so fucking
working.
funny.
He's a
That's
working guy.
I really should play. It's so funny too because like I have so many pieces of media that I want to engage with, like games, movies, TV shows, and I just don't have the fucking time. But Stardew Valley is one of those ones that is so persistent where like people just love it. People just
Yeah.
lose themselves and they fall into it. It's such a nice like safe place, which is like totally understandable. Like I was also like an Animal Crossing girly, like from like the
Mm-hmm.
OG like Nintendo GameCube Animal Crossing, like I
Yes.
love. So I totally get it. But yeah, I just my dad also plays Stardew Valley. Like if like people in my
Does he really?
yeah, my
That's
sister.
amazing.
Yeah, my dad has been a gamer like his whole life. Like he's like big nerd, like
Oh,
D&D nerd, has like the OG like from like the 80s like D&D books. Like painted like minifigures, like all like he's like big Star Trek nerd, like he's into all of it. But yeah, no, my dad loves Stardew Valley. That's like his nice like wind down game.
that's amazing. Well, it's my wind down game too.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because it's very slow paced and you really
Mhm.
have to like do a lot of work to make things happen, particularly in the early game. And that can be very frustrating sometimes. But for me, I really enjoy that because it forces me to slow down and be patient and remember that not everything is not at my fingertips, which is a good reminder in our sort of advanced now, capitalist hellscape. We should do a whole episode on cozy games because I'm realizing now that I have a lot more to say about this than I thought I did.
Let's do
So,
it. We'll
but
do an episode
anyway,
on cozy games.
Stardew Valley 1.6 is out on console. If you don't know, now you know. Now's the perfect time to pick up the game. It's got lots of new fun updates. I'm getting a lot more out of this playthrough as someone who's played it a bunch before. So that's really good. So that's thing one that I wanted to talk about. Thing two that I want to talk about is a Bob's Burgers update.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
this is so we spent our last episode talking about Bob's Burgers, and I think I mentioned at one point that the voice actor for Marshmallow had been recast. And then last week we got the first episode featuring Yari Jones, who's the new voice actress. Yari Jones is an Afro-Filipina transgender actress and model. She brings so much like heart and love to the voice of Marshmallow. But last week's episode, Hope and Mike Night, sort of centers around Marshmallow. You get to meet Marshmallow's parents. You get to hear Marshmallow sing. It's a beautiful beautiful episode. So go watch it. I got so many good feels out of watching this episode. And the kids sing another great song, which is always a plus.
Yeah.
We love a good Gene, Tina, and Louise song special. So
Oh.
I think maybe it's time to transition to our serious corner. This
Ooh.
is the serious corner. This is the time where we talk about the serious thing that we want to talk about, the shit that has real implications for the world. I went to the library and did some research. Skullie's got some hot takes that pertain to the research, and together we're gonna have a little bit of a serious conversation. So, you know, today's serious corner focuses primarily on propaganda, media portrayals of propaganda, and how, as media lovers, we can engage with our media in a way that resists the ideals of fascism in our real world. It's like a pretty hot relevant topic. Skullie, do you want to start with some of your thoughts that like inspired the choice of topic?
Yes, absolutely. So I know for many of us, this is what we would call unprecedented times, when in fact they are very precedented. Time is a circle. History may not directly repeat, but it sure does fucking rhyme. And a lot of the takes that I've seen of like people saying that we are in unprecedented times or comparing this to like the Hunger Games or the Handmaid's Tale or whatever are white people, particularly white women. And we've talked about this in previous episodes where like this, if you were a white woman who is just now getting into activism, it might feel like this is the first time that like your rights or rights in general have been threatened to this level. And the truth is that's not the case. Like marginalized groups have been fighting for their rights for literally centuries. White women have enjoyed a certain level of privilege because of their whiteness and because white women have historically sided more with their whiteness versus their womanhood and have excluded women of color, trans women, etc., from various movements and getting certain rights. And that has led to various disparities and systems of oppression to be sustained today. With all of the comparisons to Hunger Games and Handmaid's Tale, I have seen, God bless the black women of TikTok in particular, because I know y'all are exhausted and I'm so sorry. You are not Katniss. Like, white women, you are not Katniss. Like, I know Katniss is played by Jennifer Lawrence. I know that it might be exciting to be involved in something that's revolutionary, and, like, I understand that, and it's a good thing to have that excitement and to have that drive forward. That being said, people in the United States, particularly white women, you are Effie Trinket, and I think it's important as we move forward, what we're analyzing when we're watching media, and how we can either learn lessons from it, how we can see the intentions of the people that wrote it, like why are certain groups being portrayed in certain ways, what is the inner messaging here, maybe like how we can relate it to points in history, because sometimes that can happen in writing.
First of all, I totally agree with everything you've said. And I feel like with white people in particular, there is this drive to kind of take on or aestheticize parts of pieces of media that depict revolution or civil unrest or political turmoil, because that feels like the realest, truest connection to you. A lot of that impulse ends up with stuff that's like very ahistorical and divorces media from the context in which it was made and like the things that it's trying to get at and critique. So, real quick, just super duper quick. I'm going to go over my hot tips for how to critically read a piece of media that depicts revolution, political turmoil, civil unrest. This, you know, a lot of this is pulled from you know, your critical humanities classes, English classes, history classes. So if this feels like repetition to you, then that's good. And if it's new to you, then that's good too. We're all learning today. So basically what I've done here is written down a series of questions that like you should always ask yourself when you come into contact with a piece of media um, that depicts real political struggle. Question number one being like, literally, what is this piece of media depicting? Like, what are the things in the real world that are being depicted here? Um, and the reason this feels like easy baby, why would we do this step? Um, but the reason to do it is to put words to the thing that you're seeing, even if those words sound obvious. So, like, well, I'll just give an example. Avatar: The Last Airbender. What does it depict? Whole bunch of things, including war, the spread of empire, child soldiers, cultures coming into contact and clashing, economic inequality, governmental oppression. So, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Same with a piece of work like The Hunger Games. Now, if the genre of the thing that you're watching is science fiction or fantasy, or, you know, speculative fiction, anything where it takes stuff that feels real and puts it into a world that is not our world, the question you got to ask yourself is what real world things is it emulating, right? Like what is it doing successfully? What is it emulating successfully? What is it missing? What symbols is it using? What's the allegory going on here? And this can include like actual historic events that it might be emulating, aesthetics that it might be co-opting, narrative elements that might be sort of similar. And then you ask yourself, where has this happened before? Because nothing emerges out of a vacuum. To pop back to The Handmaid's Tale for a hot second, The Handmaid's Tale, in a lot of ways, asks the question, what would happen if women in the United States became basically like sex slaves? What would happen if women became slaves? And that's a very interesting question, particularly when we think about the history of reproductive rights in this country and who has had access to reproductive rights and who has not. One of the biggest critiques of The Handmaid's Tale that I really do agree with is that it does what it does in a way that ignores the racialized, gendered histories of slavery for Black women in this country, that ignores the histories of drug testing and forced sterilization on populations and immigrant populations. And it also borrows aesthetics from religious traditions where women stay fully covered to make the argument that clothes restrict women's freedom in a way that is also like a little bit ahistorical. So, you know, when you think about the image of the handmaid and the big tent, you know, like cloak with the hood that prevents the handmaid from talking to other women because she can't see. If you've read the book, this is described in great, great detail. And actually, I do recommend reading the book, The Handmaid's Tale, I will say, because while it's not a perfect piece of media, it does give you a lot of context for like what white women are so afraid of. And you know, it was written in the 80s during the Reagan era. It's sort of a reaction to like Reagan era anti-feminist politics, which, you know, echo a lot of the things that we're seeing in our current world. The TV show adaptation, I think, does some sensationalizing and storytelling that I don't know if I like it. But the book you should read, because I think it's an important book, even if it doesn't get everything right. So, you know, there's a lot of complicated stuff going on there, right? There's complicated aesthetics. There are complicated, you know, political histories that are being tapped into without emulating that exactly. So, you know, that's something to consider before, you know, you make your profile picture a handmaid or you go out into the world in your red cloak and your white hood to protest, which is the thing that has happened. I'm not saying that type of protest is wrong. I'm just saying, you know, think about who you're excluding from the movement by, you know, borrowing from that particular piece of media. And that brings me to my next question, which is like, okay, if the thing that you're seeing in media is depicting something that's based on a true story, now we're moving away from the world of fantasy and allegory where we're sort of like picking and choosing things piecemeal from real world revolutions. We're moving into the world now where it's like, okay, this is something that we're seeing depicted in a movie that happened in real life. And so you ask yourself, right, what is it representing accurately and where is it embellishing? Because media always makes a choice, right? There's always someone behind the camera making a choice about what gets represented and what doesn't. Think about like any movie version of historical events that you've ever heard of. The Pearl Harbor movie, Michael Bay, is a great example of how real world events can be portrayed in a movie in a way that is kind of like sensationalized. So that's a bad example. A better example might be from Pose, which is one of my favorite TV shows. If you haven't seen Pose, really, really like now is a great time to get on that train. Pose as a TV show depicts the lives of Black queer people in New York City during the 80s and 90s, the height of the AIDS epidemic. And during the course of the show, they pretty lovingly recreate several real ACT UP protests that happened in New York during the 80s. And they did it in such a way where it feels really, really respectful to the events that actually took place. They consulted people who were there. They did their historical research. And there are a lot of things that show does really well in representing this like really, really turmoil-filled time for the queer community. So yeah, highly recommend. Could be helpful. But like the point of all this, the point of me telling you how to watch media is that like we ask ourselves these questions so that when we go out in the world and we reference what we see in media or we replicate what we see in media, we know what it is we're replicating, what allegories we're tapping into. So to like go back to the Hunger Games for a hot second, right? There are some things that the Hunger Games movies do that pull Katniss out of her original literary context, and I think that like loss in translation gets replicated the more and more people engage with the adaptation rather than the book, because like Katniss comes from a very, very specific cultural context that is grounded in the book. It's a context of sort of like Appalachian poverty and cultural practices that a lot of Native fans of the book have sort of recognized as like, this feels like a Native practice. She's a hunter. She does a lot of stuff that feels very connected to the land and to her community in a way that feels, that's all interesting stuff to be aware of that the book was doing that then didn't quite make it into the film adaptation. And like when we look at mass media, it's important to consider like all the iterations of where it comes from, but also like literally what is this saying? And that's my big take on the Hunger Games. Also, I found this really interesting fun fact that I thought I would share, that a 2019 study in the Journal of Applied Social Psychology showed that reading the Hunger Games indirectly influences people by increasing their intention to take greater collective action against injustice. Whether they take that action or not is another story, but like these social scientists basically measured people's attitudes quantitatively and discovered that like reading The Hunger Games, which is a book about great injustice and structural violence, makes people feel like they should do something about injustice and structural violence. So next time someone tells you that the books you read don't matter, you can tell them that they're wrong because a bunch of smart people proved it. And that's pretty cool, actually. Should we move to talking a little bit more about propaganda? Because I feel like
Yes, absolutely,
that
yes. Absolutely,
is an
yes.
important component of this. Okay, so let's talk about propaganda, you guys. I'm gonna give you a couple of definitions of propaganda because I feel like we all know the word propaganda. We probably heard it from, you know, in school or like from TikTok or whatever. And it's like hard sometimes to pin down the definition if, you know, you haven't really actively thought about it. So I pulled some definitions of propaganda so that we can all be on the same page about what we're talking about. Uh, so, propaganda is the technique of controlling attitudes by the manipulation of significant symbols. I'm going to read that one more time because there's a lot of words. Propaganda is the technique of controlling attitudes by the manipulation of significant symbols. The purpose of propaganda is to provoke action. It relies on emotional content and emotional reactions, particularly fear and existential threats. Um, However, propaganda is morally a little bit neutral. It is inherently manipulative, but you can use it for any end, and people do. And the thing about propaganda is that it is such an ingrained part of mass society and mass media relations that we can't really like we can't divorce ourselves from it. It's in the air we breathe at this point in our media landscape. So what we need to do is like confront its inevitability in our lives. So just to give a couple of examples of propaganda from both sides, right? The thing about Trump is that Trump is all propaganda all the time. He is constantly manipulating significant symbols to provoke emotional reactions in people, to provoke their fear, right? The reason that this story, this sensationalized fake story about people eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, like carried so much weight is because it doesn't care about facts. It relies on that emotional reaction to the existential threat of the unknown, right? Which is what immigrants represent to a lot of people who are, concerned about their place in society, right? Trump is an excellent propaganda master. On the other side, I saw a commercial recently that I thought was very, very fascinating. It's a commercial that I believe ran in Wisconsin, where there's a young heterosexual couple and they're about to get busy. And they turn around and there's an old white guy standing in the corner of their room and they're really, really freaked out. The guy says, "Hi, I'm your Republican congressman and I'm in your bedroom because the legislature allows me to see what you do." And that is a great example of anti-Republican propaganda because it plays on the existential fear that conservatives are watching what you do in your private life and they're like in your bedroom and they're telling you like that you can or can't use birth control. It's very, very scary, very emotional propaganda.
Yeah.
Um,
Love it.
yeah, exactly.
That's
So
fucking genius.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
the thing the bottom line thing about propaganda, right, is that anyone can do propaganda. Anyone can do propaganda. It is morally neutral, but it always relies on people's emotional reactions and the manipulation of significant symbols, right? The old white man standing in your bedroom, there's some big, big symbols being played with in there.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're living in an age where propaganda is so important and we all need to be thinking about it, is because we live in what's called a time of doubtful authenticity, where information is less about power and more about suspicion. And part of the reason for this is that we're finding as our world gets more complicated that our authority systems are insufficient at providing us with the tools we need to actually make sense of what we're seeing in the world. And that includes school, it includes religious institutions, it includes the government. Kind of at all sides, because it feels like when we ask questions of the people in power, they're not providing us with real answers. And that basically creates what we call a vacuum of truth, where, everything feels a little bit suspicious and nothing is sacred, including facts. But the reality is that this vacuum of truth will get filled with propaganda because a good story is more compelling every time.
Yeah. Than actual
Every time.
facts. Yeah. And I think like this is also so heavily to do with the conservative party, the modern conservative party at this point, where like pretty much I think every single policy that they have, everything that they are moving forward with, that they are pushing, like limiting trans rights, mass deportation, limiting birth control and banning abortions and such, none of it is based in actually like helping the country or helping people or like the facts that have been provided of like none of it is
Mhm.
based in fact, it is based in fear. It is all fear-based ideology that is moving this because mass deportation, of course, we've seen, and like the tariffs, the whole fucking thing with the tariffs. Like, it's not based in
Mhm.
fact, it's based in fear-based ideology that like China's gonna take over, so we need to eliminate
Right.
all association with China, right? When in actuality, all this is gonna do is make Americans spend more on basic goods. Mass deportation, for example, the immigrants are gonna take our jobs, the immigrants are all criminals. Actually, natural US born citizens are more likely to commit crimes than immigrants. This has been proven statistically, like actual
Mhm.
like data has been taken to show that like US born citizens are much more likely to commit crimes. So that's also just a complete lie. More raising of prices because a lot of, illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, rather, are the ones that are actually the ones like picking our food and like doing a lot of the jobs that frankly Americans like don't really want to do. Also, I'm gonna get on a fucking rant here about this, where it's like
Yes. Yes.
you're fucking backwards ass like super old fucking white uncle thinking that immigrants are gonna take his job at like an insurance company or something. When was the last time that you saw someone who like did not speak English or did not have English fluently take a position that you were like applying for and like working towards? What the fuck is wrong with you? You are actually fucking
Yeah.
insane. Like it's this, and again, it's like it's not based in fact, it's not based in any sort of rational argument or reasoning. It is all based in this fear, in this boogeyman. It's so wild, but it is just because it's constantly hit home. It's just constantly being talked about, the same five talking points. And this is how I can always tell that like people aren't actually thinking for themselves, despite the fact that the Conservative Party is like, oh, you guys are all sheeple, blah, blah, blah. Like they're the ones that are like, and I'm like, do you listen to yourself? You parrot the same five talking
Yeah.
points that have no basis in a reality. Like you are
Yeah.
living in a different reality fully. You are fueled solely by your fucking delusions because you can't
Mhm.
pick up a fucking book. You can't do a fucking
Right.
cursory Google search when you hear something that's completely outrageous. Like
Yes.
I get so furious because like it truly Americans, and this is like a tenet of white supremacy, is like comfort. Americans,
Yeah.
specifically white Americans, desire to remain in comfort supersedes like everything. Like you would
Mhm.
rather be blissfully ignorant and be comfortable in your delusions than actually find out the truth. Despite the narrative that
Well,
you
and
push
here's
that
the
you're
thing.
the party of the truth, like we're the ones that are the real ones.
Right.
It's like you are literally fueled by your own delusions and your racism and your misogyny and your
Yes.
transphobia.
Yes. Yes. So here's the thing about truth and reality. Because you're right, conservatives do love to sort of parrot this ideology of like, well, you got to find out the truth for yourself, do the research.
Do
Do the
your
research
research.
has increasingly become a conservative rallying cry, and this is fascinating to me because like what they mean when they say do the research is
Just
go
watch
out
Joe
in the
Rogan.
world and yes, and make up your own facts based on patterns you observe personally that confirm your own fear rather than doing what we who do research professionally do, which is go to the sources who know the most about this topic and ask them questions because they've done empirical research, right? Actual scientific research, social scientific research that has been vetted and practiced by academics for a very, very long time. And part of the reason, again, the reason this is happening is because of the derailment and deconstruction of these authority systems that create a vacuum. People don't trust the academy. They don't trust the government. And so when they say do the research, what they mean is find patterns that like prop up
From
your
your
version
own,
of the truth because
yeah,
truth is socially constructed.
yeah, use the anecdotes from your life and he said she said's from the friends and other
Mhm.
conservative friends and family members in your life to further
Right.
enforce the preconceived notions you have about other groups that you frankly don't interact with. Like
Yes.
that's my other issue. Like whenever I hear some
Yes.
like white conservative talk about trans people, I'm like, have you ever met a trans person? Like,
No.
like,
No.
like I
Well,
it I c- I have such a hard time like, and I have to laugh. I have to laugh because I'm like, you are such a clown. You look ridiculous. You look
yes.
absolutely fucking bonkers right now that you think that the evil that exists in our communities is the trans people when you go to fucking
Yeah.
church every Sunday with your pastor who's like touched kids. Go fuck
Yeah.
yourself. Go
Yeah.
fuck yourself. It's never been about the kids. If it was about the kids, the evangelical church would have been shut down fucking years ago. You fucking pricks. I'm so
Yeah.
sick of this like this not again nonsensical boogeyman that is just fueled by this fear of anything that is remotely different or unique or beyond what is quote normal. Like I have no
Mhm.
fucking patience for it. I have no goddamn
Yeah.
patience for I have no tolerance for intolerance. Like you need to actually go out in the world and like have a real conversation with real people because you look like a fucking clown. Like I can't
Yeah.
take it.
Well, and the crazy thing is that, like, while we're having this conversation in our, secluded little bubble of the internet, they're having that conversation over
Right.
there in their secluded little bubble of the internet, which has been totally fueled and propped up by everybody finding and making up their own facts because that's the culture.
Yeah.
That's how, like, QAnon, which is like
Oh
the sort
god, are
of
we gonna get into
QAnon
QAnon?
just for 2 seconds. So QAnon is a conspiracy theory fandom. You guys, it operates the exact same way as every other fandom where people make and create their transformative works based on conspiracy theories and the facts that they make up and pull together. But the problem is that it's like propped up on a card castle built of propaganda because they heard so and so on Fox News say this thing, and they heard so and so on Facebook say that thing, and so on X tweeted a meme about this. And so like their world that they are constructing for themselves is totally built off of subjective opinions that they are treating as fact. And even if your conservative aunt or uncle isn't a crazy Q person, that's sort of that's the culture
Yeah.
of those worlds. I had to do earlier this week a project for a professor that I'm assisting where I had to look up memes that conservatives created around this like Haitian pet eating fake news thing. And it is wild to me how rich and detailed and satirical their cultural contributions are. They're full of emotional richness that is
Yeah.
designed to make people feel a certain type of way. And they're so good at propaganda. They are so good at propaganda because
Yeah.
facts don't matter to them.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
And that
That
sucks.
sucks real hard.
And I think like the reason why or maybe one of the reasons why I get so angry about this because I have been like I have been a a very loud-mouthed woman since I've been
Mm,
a wee lass. Like I've always been
we
like
love to see it.
I've been very justice driven because of like, like childhood shit in my family of being told one thing and then, being told that like this is how we treat people. Like we don't treat people with disrespect, we don't treat people blah blah blah. And then having the people closest to me embody the behaviors and traits of those that we shouldn't trust. And then being told that this is but I love you and like having that mixed messaging and being like, nope, this doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
me. This does not make sense. Like this does not compute. You're lying and this is wrong and like and I'm like I know what's right and I know that you're the adult in this situation and you have continuously used my naivete as a child against me and manipulated me for it and like knowing seeing those disconnects early but then also having like so much media growing up that was so like we're gonna go back to Avatar: The Last Airbender talking about Avatar: The Last Air being blatantly like in being an American show for like children, an American show for children on Nickelodeon being blatantly and heavy-handedly anti-war, anti-imperialism, anti-propaganda, and like showing like anti-supremacy as well of like showing
Mm,
the impacts of war, not just through like the soldiers, but like how multiple generations, like children, innocents, are always caught in the crossfire. It's never like, as much as you want to try to like justify killing a certain group, it's never justified. And it shows like all of those sides. How propaganda shapes a generation. When Aang goes to the Fire
Mhm.
Nation and learns about like the history, and they talk about the Air Nation army, and he speaks up and he says the Air Nomads didn't have an army. Like they were a peaceful people. And then the teacher is like, "Oh, well, like I don't know why you would know more than our history books or whatever." Like why, and him questioning it is immediately met with being chastised and with being shut
Mhm.
down. And
Yeah.
even like as an adult of like hearing a very watered down history of our country, and then growing up and learning about things like Black Wall Street, and
Yeah.
I mean like so much of like black suffering in general in the US and indigenous suffering in the US, like watered down. And this is not news. This is like, we know this, that like American imperialism is wrong and it's evil, and the America has enacted so many atrocities on so many marginalized groups since its founding, you know. But growing up and having all of these pieces come together, it has made me such an intolerant person for this kind of shit. Like it
Yeah.
has, and because like when you have it, because again, we don't really see it, or maybe as like as a white woman in the U.S., I don't see it, or I didn't see it growing up, and then
Mm.
you see it more and more, and with a globalized world like the internet, you see like actual like videos, like things happening because of the U.S. government, and like real accounts of like indigenous elders talking about things that like the US government has done to like poison their water, not just like take their land, but like poison their like actual resources, various things. You start to learn and you're like, "Oh my god, this has all been so purposeful to keep me in line and keep me aligned with this country." And it's all been it's it's so purposeful. It's so deliberate in
Mhm.
maintaining control and allegiance, starting from when you were young,
Yep.
from when you were a wee kiddo, learning about like the first Thanksgiving. And like,
Yep.
here's the thing too, is like, oh, we don't want to teach the kids about like genocide or whatever, like that's the ruling or whatever. I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender when I was like 7 years old. That was like the demographic, right? Like.
Mhm.
And that was a story that taught about literally genocide. And I was able to process it, and I was able to like it didn't scar me. It was a very poignant story about a child who loses his community. And we've seen that story
Yeah.
told multiple times over, but with the framing of like imperialism and like all these things, you can teach about these things to kids that are young as long as you're doing it in a way that is
Mindful.
mindful, right? Spirituality
Yeah.
as well, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, dealing with things like spirituality, mindfulness, reflection.
Mhm.
Uncle Iroh and Aang being like very spiritually minded individuals. Like Aang in particular is so interesting to me because I think like, oh, someone someone jetting outside your window.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
There's loud people on a motorcycle. We get lowriders blasting music sometimes.
Yeah.
New York City. Woo
Woo
woo.
woo. We love. Aang is so interesting
Yeah.
too. Aang is so interesting too because like he is such a young boy, which we often associate with like uh being aggressive and like maybe not understanding boundaries and like making excuses for young boys. And he is so spiritually minded, and he is like chaotic. He's still like silly, but
Mhm.
he is someone who isn't like aggressive and doesn't like tease people for being softer or being kinder. Like he is an incredibly soft, sweet, compassionate boy.
Yeah.
And having that representation growing up, I think, was also important because like
Yeah.
there are boys like that, but they are also often like bullied. Now we're getting into
Mhm.
just talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, but like
I mean, we could talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender all day, every day. A thing that I think it does really well as a piece of media that sort of critiques state-sanctioned violence is portraying a whole spectrum of masculinity,
hmm
both in its child characters and its adult characters. You don't you don't see that a whole lot in kids media. I think it's super important. But like going back to the thing that you said about like how deeply ingrained all this stuff is. Yeah, it is. It's really really deeply ingrained.
I'm
And
like
it is
sweating,
that way for a reason. Like no,
getting
because
so amped about this.
the reason that schools during times of authoritarian government, the reason that people give this excuse of like, oh, kids can't handle learning about genocide and slavery, is not because kids can't handle learning about genocide and slavery. It's because like authoritarianism benefits when people don't know facts and people can't critique authoritarian structures of power. Like the less people know, the more an authoritarian structure of power will benefit. And so it is like in their vested interest. And like this contributes on our side, right? On the leftist side, this contributes to our lack of faith in our powerful institutions,
hmm
right? And on their side, right, their lack of faith comes from their fear that powerful institutions are going to, force their children to change who they are, or that or that their jobs are going to go away, or that, it's these huge, huge existential fears. And for us on the left, the existential fear is people not knowing.
Yeah,
Um, and it is terrifying. It is.
yeah. That's why Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education.
Yep.
The U.S.
Yep.
Department, the U.S. education is already terrible. It's already I don't know what number we are in the world, but for being the richest country in the world, we should have the best education in the world, and we don't. Um,
Mhm.
we don't. And
Yeah.
the Conservative Party in particular benefits from less educated individuals. You can see like the direct relation to education level and
Yeah.
um, voting party, like how
Yep.
Democrats typically have more educated and conservatives typically have less educated. And like
Right.
there's so many conversations to have about that and like the class structures and like all that stuff too, but it's just like
Yeah.
keep yourself keep yourself like educated. I'm actually going to make a video soon talking about, and I think I'm actually going to title it like quote, do your research, just talking about
Ha!
like how to like source like primary sources and like how to actually like
Uh,
verify facts and like the difference between like media conglomerates and like are they left leaning, are they right leaning, what is the narrative that they're pushing, how talking about the
mhm.
same story can have vastly different framings and vastly different headlines and why that might be, you know.
Yeah.
um
Totally. And this
yeah
I feel like is education that like I got really well as a young person. And I think I don't know about you, but like we had a computer teacher at my middle school whose job it was to teach us all how to vet information online and how to be careful about not putting our own personal information online. And I feel like this is sort of an armchair theory that I've heard swung around on TikTok, and it's not researched at all. This is just my personal thoughts. But like, I feel like that education went away once the internet became a little bit more ubiquitous because people just assumed that kids know how to navigate the internet.
yeah
But like that safety training should be mandatory because it
absolutely.
helps you sort out, factual information.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I had multiple uh chapters, so to speak, of that as well. Of like in
Mm-hmm.
elementary school, we had those like big boxy computers, and we had like type to
Yep.
learn and like all these things, whatever.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, like learning like if even the basic thing of like if a website has like a ton of ads and a ton of pop-ups on it, it's probably not a legitimate source. It's probably not a more legitimate source. And like like that simple thing for like a kid to process of like seeing like oh, there's all these like blinking like ads and stuff on the side, or like, you know, and then that's a safety thing too, because like viruses and stuff you can get on your computer from going on sketchy
Mhm.
websites. But even just like as a cursory glance, just like a quick thing of like, oh wow, this website has like so many ads on it. Like maybe this isn't the right place that I should be sourcing information for like a paper of mine or something, was super helpful. And I still use that tip today. But we had like this or that, like worksheets, like or not worksheets, like instructional pages of like what a more
Mhm.
legitimate source looks like, and then what a like less verified source might look like. But yeah, I 100% agree that should be mandatory. And then getting further into high
Yes.
school, like things like citations, like verifying citations, and like
Mhm.
learning how to look up like scholarly journals, like Google Scholar, which is not on the basic tab anymore. You have to like search for Google Scholar now. It's not
Yep.
like readily available.
Mhm.
But like how to
That's
source
right.
like scholarly articles, and how to cite them, like what information you need to be checking to see that it's verified, like
Yeah.
how to see where certain statistics come from. Like if you're reading an article and they don't source where they got the statistic from, that's suspicious. If they don't have
Mhm.
a source of where they got that stat from, where they get that stat from. And then if they do have a stat
Yeah.
there, check to see which organization it is. Is it like the Pew like Research Center, or is it like Zippy Doo in his backyard with his 30 best friends? Like who fucking
Yeah.
sources information,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, and like what we really need now is a primer to teach everybody how to do that for a social media post, you know?
Yeah.
Because our version was like in the world of the web where webs were discrete places that you would go to each one individually for different pieces of information and then you would
Yeah.
write a research paper about it.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, I'm watching so and so's hot take on TikTok.
Yeah.
What are this person's qualifications? Are they speaking from a place of personal experience only? Are they parroting voices that they've heard elsewhere on the internet? Um, is there legitimate fact talked about here? Are they talking about things that they've read or referenced? Do they have an advanced degree?
Yeah.
These are all questions that I ask myself whenever I watch a TikTok that's a hot take about current events. I'm like, okay, am I treating your take like it's a personal testimony or like it's coming from a place of empirical knowledge?
Right.
And I gotta plug one of my favorite TikTokers is an academic by the name of Tressie McMillan Cottom. And if you're not following her TikTok, you should be. But she's a sociologist and she's a contributor to The Daily Show. And she writes a column for the New York Times. So she makes public appearances all over the place because, she, like me, believes that you should make the things you know accessible to people, not just in the academy. Her TikTok is one of the primary ways that she does this, and she's so fucking brilliant. And people are always hopping in her comments to try and discredit her, and she's like, "Nah, I'm a sociologist." Like you sure you can say that, but I use the correct words for the thing that I'm speaking about
Yeah.
because I know what I'm speaking about.
Oh my god. And I have and it is so when we talk about comment sections, because you and I have had a vast and varied experience in comment sections, regarding comment sections, as creators
Yeah.
online. And it always baffles me how so many people can say something so loudly and so wrong on a public platform. Like for me,
Mhm.
whenever and this is like before I was a creator, whenever I would leave comments on anything, I would always like double triple make sure that it was like a correct thing that I was saying
Yeah.
before saying it. Because like frankly, I don't want to embarrass myself, but also it's like I don't want to spread misinformation. That shit bugs me to my fucking core. It is so wild to me that the
Yes.
like the casual attitude of just like commenting whatever off the dome without doing any prior research or understanding of a certain topic that people will do and assert it as a fact. I have to kind of reel back sometimes because I know that not everyone comments with the same intention that I do. And I have to, in my mind, like reframe it of like most people that comment. don't actually think more than 5 seconds about what they're commenting, and they just send it. And then they forget about it. And they don't think about it as often as, like, I do. Because I'll read some stuff and I'm like, "That's just wrong." And then I'll question myself. I'll be like, "Is that wrong?" And then I'll look it up. I'm like, "No, that's wrong. What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah.
I get so annoyed that people will just like because then like I'll read like people read through comment sections, and if they read a comment and they like internalize it, I'm like, if someone says something confidently enough, there's at least one person that will believe it, you know?
Mhm.
Like there was that like study or
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah, there was that like study or whatever where they put like one guy in a room with like a bunch of different people that were all agreeing on one thing being insane. There was like one insane thing that they were like all told like they were the rest of the people were plants. The rest of the people were plants, and there was
Yeah.
one normal guy. And they basically were all in agreement about this one insane thing that they thought was like a fact. And then he ended up agreeing with them because they were just
Yeah.
all saying the same thing. I have to find the study. I forget exactly what it
Yep.
was, but they just like it
Yeah.
was like showcasing that like yeah, when you hear something enough times or when someone says something with enough confidence and authority, you're more likely to believe it even if you think that it may not be correct.
Yes.
Ugh,
Yes, absolutely. Well, and this is why misinformation is so fucking dangerous.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, sorry.
this
We'll
is another definition that I feel like is important. No. This is a good tangent because it gets me to the
Good,
next
good.
thing that I was like, I can't not talk about misinformation and if we're gonna talk about propaganda, we got to define misinformation and
Let's go.
disinformation. So you actually gave me the perfect segue.
I'm so
Okay,
glad.
so and this is also, again, shout out to Tracy McMillan Cottom because this is her way of remembering it and explaining it to her students that I have borrowed and will continue to borrow. So misinformation is accidental. Uh, think about it as in you missed something, misinformation. Um, but when you share misinformation, you might accidentally be spreading propaganda or disinformation, which is information that is wrong that is spread intentionally for the purpose of doing propaganda. Thinking like you diss me by telling me disinformation. So,
Is
like
that how she
the
says it? I love
cycle
that.
of this. Yes, she said that, and she's right. She's 100% right. That's a great way to remember it.
That's perfect.
Um, because what happens, right, is these like ideological apparatuses decide to spread disinformation. So Trump spreads disinformation by going on the debate stage and saying that Haitians are eating dogs in Ohio. Right? And
Yeah.
then people hear that and you know, even if 5% of people who heard that thought that it was true, then they go tell everybody and they're spreading misinformation. They don't realize it's misinformation because they heard it and thought it was true,
Mhm.
right? And this is again across the political spectrum. There's misinformation and disinformation. One of the things that I noticed in the wake of the election was misinformation being spread on the left about voting machines, sort of calling for a recount and saying like these voting machines, the Elon Musk voting machines were hacked. Voting machines are not connected to the internet. It is very difficult to hack a voting machine. But in the days following the election, I saw that piece of misinformation spread over and over and over again by people who were sad and angry and scared about Trump being elected president.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me because I saw it, I knew it was incorrect, I understood immediately why people were sharing it. But like, that's how they get us,
Mhm.
guys. That's how they get us. We were sad and angry and scared. We were having a big feeling. This piece of propaganda got passed down to us, and people were sharing it because they had a big feeling and they didn't take a minute to tune in with the facts. So, if you are seeing something online and it is making you have a big emotional reaction,
Yeah.
that is like, that should be red flag numero uno for you to go and figure out, get to the bottom of it, do the research,
Just
but
look it up. Yeah. Yeah.
actually do the research. Find someone who is a journalist or an academic or, you know, someone who has skin in the game where if they say incorrect shit, they could get discredited. Find that person. And then, you know, figure out if any of those people have a take on it. That's what I do. That's what I do personally.
Yeah.
When I come across a piece of information online that makes me feel some type of way,
I do the
and
same
I don't
thing.
know if it's true or not.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And I
Find
tell
someone
people,
who has
yep,
skin in the game and who will get ridiculed by their professional peers if they say shit that is wrong.
yeah. I tell people this shit all the time because like and I actually got this advice from my dad too. Because again, I
Yeah.
and also I understand as someone who is a very angry, justice-driven person, like I I understand when you hear something that is wild and outlandish. It's I understand most of these things can be believable in the world we're living in. But
Yeah.
if you hear something that gives you a strong emotional reaction, just do a cursory Google search, just real quick. Just see, because I hear shit on TikTok all the time.
Yeah.
Just do a quick little Google search. Just double check, see if there's like two or three sources, just two sources even, that talk about it and that verify it or debunk it. Just just check, because I think sometimes, especially with content that's like rage baity or
Mhm.
content that benefits financially from getting a strong emotional reaction out of you, even if they are relaying certain information, it could be with nefarious intentions. You know what I'm saying? Like bad things could still be happening, but the way it's being presented might be more misleading because that person benefits financially from getting a strong emotional reaction out of you. The bad guy's always capitalism and patriarchy,
Yeah.
always.
Period.
But
Bad guys
yeah,
always capitalism.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I give that advice all the time. Because as someone who does also like, I get angry about shit. I get super angry about shit. I'm a bitch who runs on spite. Like, I get it, 100%. But like doing that quick check in will not only like usually calm me down a little bit, but also will keep you from looking like a fucking idiot saying some shit that's not true.
Mhm.
And fucking with your credibility, which you
Yep.
absolutely do not want. You
Well,
know?
and then the propaganda machine stops with you. You
Yeah.
become the point where the message doesn't get transmitted because you said, no, I'm
Mhm.
not going to transmit that message. That sounds fishy to me.
Yeah.
And like the way that the propaganda machine works is people unwittingly opting in to sharing information that they think is true that's not true.
Yeah.
And so like when you it's like have you ever seen one of those have you ever seen one of those diagrams of Swiss cheese to explain like COVID transmission? Okay, so
Literally
I'm going to
no.
describe this for you.
What the
So
fuck?
literally, so imagine a lineup of like a bunch of pieces of Swiss cheese, right?
Uh-huh.
And because Swiss cheese has holes, right? But not all the
Sure
holes
does.
are in the same places. And so, like, when you're a COVID conscious person and okay, you test, that's one layer of Swiss cheese. You wear a mask, that's another layer of Swiss
Oh, I'm
cheese.
seeing it now. I will add this
And
diagram
so
up here.
the virus, the more things you do, the more pieces of cheese that you add between you and the virus, the less likely you are to, transmit COVID-19. Same is true with propaganda, right?
Yes. Google
When
search.
you do a quick Google search, that's a layer of Swiss cheese. When you see your friend sharing something that you think is incorrect and you say, hey, I think that thing you shared is a little bit sus, that's another layer of Swiss cheese, right? And the more layers of Swiss cheese we can put between ourselves and disinformation, the better things will be. Like this is what we talk about when we say media lovers against complacency. This is the thing. Actually, the more you protect yourself and the people in your immediate like social vicinity from spreading misinformation, gently, you don't gotta be like, you jerk, you don't
You
share
fucking
misinformation with us,
idiot. You fucking
you
piece of
fucking
shit.
moron.
You look so
No,
stupid
no,
right now. Be like,
yeah,
"Oh
no,
yeah, like
don't be that guy.
that's actually like a common
But
misconception."
I did this
Yeah.
recently. I did this recently in a group chat where someone was spreading misinformation. I said, "Hey guys, first of all, I understand that everyone's having big feelings. Uh, that doesn't feel correct to me. And second of all, this chat needs to be a place where we don't share random things we find on the internet. We can have another chat for that, but this is our chat where we just share silly haha memes and stuff."
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Like those boundaries are also Swiss cheese. There's Swiss cheese for your mental health.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's Swiss cheese for your
so
mental health. My brain's full of
thank you
holes anyway, so.
for. I don't know how we got to Swiss cheese, but thank you for playing in my sandbox. with me about this because
Earth,
I feel like it's a fun metaphor.
Earth, honey, I'll play in your sandbox any day, as long as I'm invited.
Woo!
Woo!
You're always invited. You're
Yeah.
always partying in my sandbox, you guys.
I love it.
Party.
No, yeah. I mean, I do this shit all the time. I do this shit all the fucking time with my family members, some of which who are just misinformed and some who are just straight up dumbasses. I'm sure plenty of you can
Yeah.
relate to having stupid ass fucking family members that are fucking dumb. Love them, but god damn it, read a book.
Yeah.
Where like even just like gently like, oh, that's actually a common misconception, or like that's I did read that, but I think that that's wrong. Like or whatever. Like
Mhm.
going like having little deterrents and reframings of just being like, oh, so like I think I heard that, you know, like there was one that I saw and it was like this one TikTok and it was like when girls get together and it was talking about like seeing your friends for the first time and like getting really excited. And one of the friends said something about like sunlight and like not needing sunblock or whatever that was super like not an actual fact. And then the other friend was like, "Oh, I think we have different feeds." And I was like, and I was like, that
Yeah.
is so funny. But it's like that, but it's like, yeah, like I don't know what you're seeing, but I don't think that's right. Like, oh, I think we have different feeds.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I say that
Mhm.
shit all the time now. I think it's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, little things like that. Like even like since like high school, like some of my oldest friends are men and white guys that I love very dearly. But in high school, yeah, they have said some racist and misogynist shit, and I've called them out on it because again, I've always been outspoken. I feel like honesty is the best policy, and having those conversations as early as like 14 and 15 and telling my friends like, "Hey, like that's kind of fucked up. Like that's like kind of a shitty thing to do." Or like that's a common misconception or like, you know, like, that's wrong, dude." Uh and having those open dialogues, particularly with men who maybe won't be like as tuned in, made them grow into like better, more discerning people who are like actually very respectful of like women's rights and rights of people of color and like stay educated, like they stay in tune to like what's going on. Also, all of them have long-term girlfriends and or are married. So if you want puss, stay the
Period.
fucking educated. Stay fucking educated.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's
This is also true for lesbians too.
Yes.
It's not just
True.
for straight
Yes.
men.
Yeah.
If you want puss, stay educated. This is true for everyone who wants puss. Can confirm.
Yes. Can confirm. So that's really the guiding light in all this. So yeah.
TLDR, if you want puss, stay educated. No, this is just so good. It's so good. I love that this is our big fat takeaway.
Yeah. This is why all those red
Because
pillars
it's
are so
true.
lonely. It is so true. That's why all these
Yeah.
fucking red pill
Yeah.
incels are so lonely, dude. Like they don't know what they're fucking talking about.
The
You want puss, stay
irony,
educated.
oh man.
Yeah.
The irony that the red pill is a metaphor from a movie written by two trans women.
Okay.
That's like definitely an allegory for how like the world is fucked up and you know people who can see through the matrix are people who have been harmed by the oppressive systems. The fact that this has been co-opted.
We need to talk about the Matrix on an episode for sure.
Oh yeah, let's do a Matrix episode. Fuck yeah, I'm so about that because this is a thing that I'll never not. I'll be mad about that forever.
Yeah,
I'll be mad about that forever.
Exhausting.
They got to it. They got to it so first and with so much like gusto.
Yeah,
it pisses me off. So mad.
Anyway,
so mad.
Do you have any other thoughts on this? I feel like this has just been a full rant episode back and forth.
It's just been like I feel like it's been a really productive conversation though.
Oh,
you know?
for sure.
Like,
but rant nonetheless.
Yeah, rant nonetheless. TLDR, if you want puss, read a book. And that's pretty much all I feel that I have to say about it.
That's probably going to be a real motivator for some people. All right.
On that topic for like 2 seconds, maybe just to transition us into the unserious corner.
Go.
I saw a TikTok that was this guy talking about how he and his wife they set up their single friends, but also they have single friends who they refuse to set up because these guys are like clearly messy and not ready for a real relationship.
Yeah.
And they haven't that's and so like you're the people around you know, they know if you have read books
Oh my
and
god.
they will help you get puss if you show them you show them
Also,
that you've got your shit together.
like, oh my god. Yeah, I 100%. And like for me, it's so easy to tell when you're having a conversation with somebody who does not know what they're talking about. If you don't know what you're
Yeah.
talking about on a subject, shut the fuck up. Stop talking.
Stop
Because
talking.
and
Stop
it's okay.
talking.
You don't have to talk about it if you're like, "Oh, I actually don't really know a lot about that or whatever." That's okay. You're going to look way
Mhm.
less stupid saying you don't know something about a topic than talking out your ass about something you don't know fucking shit about.
Mhm.
You are going to look so fucking dumb, dude. Don't do it.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
god.
Do what my male so I had a meeting earlier this week with my game studies professor who's a man. Um and I was talking about my thesis and he knows a lot about games, this guy. He's got a PhD basically in game studies. And my thesis is about an area of games that he doesn't know about very well. And he said that to me. He said, "Oh, that's cool. I don't really know a whole lot about cozy games." And I said, "Great. It's a thing I know a lot about. So if you ever want to talk about it, I have so many thoughts." And it was a beautiful, lovely interaction. And I felt so respected by this colleague uh because he said he didn't know something
Yeah.
because
And
he represented himself accurately and like that just do that it takes 2 seconds
yeah, just be
and
honest.
like I will fully call myself out and say that I love knowing things and sometimes feel insecure when I don't know something
Mhm.
and that's a thing that I'm like actively working on and you should too. It's a good look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes you more like and again like not that the goal for is to be more approachable or be more humble, but like it can be an endearing quality in someone to just be like, "Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Would you mind telling me about it?" Like that's a nice thing to like
Mm,
hear someone like, "Oh, could you tell me more about that?" Like you're engaging with someone in letting them talk about something that they know a lot about and that can be really exciting for that person too. Like,
mhm.
so yeah, it's not always a thing of like making yourself smaller. It's just a thing of it's just being honest. It's like don't be afraid to be honest. It's always better
Hell yeah.
to be honest and be real than to be a fucking put on and act like you fucking know everything. That shit is so gross and weird.
Pretty.
Um
Yeah. True facts.
anyway, unserious corner as we peel out of that.
You were like, "Let's stop," and I was like, "Nah, let me get one more
No.
story in."
No, I love it. I love a good anecdote. Um so these were ones that I added one in here that's me, but the rest of these were ones that Shem came up with because he is the most unserious person I know. And
Oh,
I feel
thank you,
like
Shem.
yeah, I feel like
That's nice.
he's an authority on this topic. So I'm not even joking. I like explained to him this segment and I was like, I need some like fun, unserious questions. If you want to make them seasonal, go for it. And without a fucking beat, he goes, top 10 numbers 1 through 10.
Top 10 numbers. So, do you rank the numbers in
Yes.
the order of which oh my god,
Which is so
that's
unserious and
amazing.
stupid. I love it.
That is so stupid, and it's great. I
I'm gonna need to write
top
mine
10
down.
numbers. Yeah, I think I have to oh, this is a hard one for me. So, for context, in addition to being autistic, I also
Are you
have a learning
dyslexic?
disability called dyscalculia,
Oh, just calculus.
which is number dyslexia. Yeah, it's number dyslexia. So I have really strong feelings about numbers, but like most of them are related to like how much these numbers annoy me. Or don't annoy me.
Ooh.
So
You can rank them
I'm
that
gonna have to
way.
think about what the most annoying numbers are. Because I got beef with some numbers. I really, really do. Let's see.
All right. What is your ranked 10 number? We'll go 10 up to 1 and why?
Okay, so my least favorite of all the numbers from 1 through 10 is 7.
Ooh, I
Because
also
7 is very, very difficult to work with. It's an odd number. It's tricky. It's not easy like some of the other odd number, like 5 is so easy.
Yep.
7's not easy. 9 is, I like 9 a lot more. But 7 is the worst to me. 7 is the worst number.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I had 7 ranked lower as well. But I had 9 as my last number for a similar reasons.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, I just 9 is just like 9 is longing. 9 is not quite 10. 9 is 9 struggles, I think, to be something more. And how many things associated with 9 are things that like are enjoyable? You know? Like I
Oh,
don't
that's interesting. See, for me, 9 is ranked way up there for one reason only,
Tell
and
me.
it's because of the finger calculator tick that you can do with your multiplications tables. Do you know this one?
No.
So, my teacher taught me this in the 3rd grade. I'm gonna see if I can remember. Oh gosh, hang on. There's gonna be a lot of faffing about that you're gonna want to cut for time.
I can't wait.
The trick with the 9s is put out your fingers and you fold down the finger that is the one that is you're multiplying by 9. So let's say I'm doing what's 5 times 9. I fold down my 5th finger, 45. 4 on one hand, 5 on the other. Works for the whole 9s times tables. 2 times 9, 18. Second finger, 1, 8.
Oh.
And after learning that trick in the 3rd grade, I could do my 9s times tables. See? Isn't that crazy?
I'm not even joking. I'm furious. I'm furious
Isn't
that I
that
didn't know
like 9
that.
is way up there though? Like for me, I ranked 9 number 4 because of the 9s times tables trick. Because I have a calculator on my body. It was so helpful for me growing up.
That's so whimsical. That's so whimsical, and
Yeah.
I'm mad I didn't have that.
I feel for you.
You know what? I'm gonna keep 9 there because I don't want to reorder my whole fucking thing. But I have a new appreciation for the number 9 thanks to you. So,
Oh yeah.
my number 9 was number 1. Because 1 is the loneliest
Mhm.
number. And
Mm.
again, I'm like 1 is so boring. 1 is so lame. Individualist mindset. No, thank you.
Mhm. I'm now realizing how much of mine are based on like, is this number easy to do math with?
That's totally fine.
1 is ranked, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's way split in the middle. It's number 5. Because it is a very lonely number, but also is really easy to add to stuff.
That's totally
You
fair.
ask me what's anything plus 1, and I'll tell you in 2 seconds. So easy. I don't even have to think about it. And for me, it's the little things in life, you know?
I love that. I was really good at math in school, so I can't I don't share your same struggle, so but this conversation is valid.
Yes. Yes. It's the same reason that 10 is number 1 for me. Because
10 is
base
number
10,
1?
for me, our whole number system works on 10s.
Yeah.
All the math that I do to figure out how much things cost, I'm always thinking about the number 10. Percentages and like, in increments of $10, and 10 has helped me with my rounding a lot. So that to me is the best of all the numbers. What was your best of all the numbers?
Mine was number 3 cuz I feel like
Ooh!
yeah. I love number 3.
3 is a magic number.
It's
Yes,
so
it is.
magic.
Did you watch Schoolhouse Rock as a kid?
Yeah, of course. Oh my god. It was like
Yeah.
mandatory like a visual aid or not visual aid. It was like mandatory watching in my elementary school.
Oh, see, it wasn't mandatory for us, but I did watch it a lot. And the only reason I could do a lot of my times tables is because I have the song memorized from Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh my god.
3 is the best one because it goes 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. And that's how I remember my 3 times. To this day, at the big age of 29 years old, that is how I remember my 3 times tables.
That's fucking fantastic. Anyways, all right. Why don't we go through these like top to bottom, just like say them because I feel like we've already talked about numbers too fucking long. So my number one was 3, and then
Yeah.
8 because it's pretty
Ooh.
and round. Then 5,
Oh.
6, 4, all around like hangout numbers. Like I feel like those are good hangout numbers. Then 10, 7, 2, 1, 9.
This is fascinating. Okay, so 10 is the first for me. And then 5, because 5 is half of 10, and also I like the way 5 looks. I find it very
Love
beautiful.
5 being in both of our top 3s.
She's very gorgeous to me. And then 2, because 2 is also easy to work with. And then 9 because of the finger thing. And then 1 because 1 is also easy to work with. And then 4 because 4 is an even number.
Yes.
And then 3 because 3 is an odd number, and I find it tiresome sometimes. And then 6, and then 8 because at that point the numbers start getting too big, and I have a hard time visualizing how many beans it is. I'm like, I don't know, 6, 8. I also mix those two up a lot. That's one of the dyscalculia number swaps that's really really bad for me. 6 and 8 because they look so similar.
Mhm.
And then 7 is the worst one to me.
I love it. Knowing like the times tables, that makes sense because I agree. I think 8 and 6 were the ones where it was like it gets a little mushy in the middle.
Oh my god, so mushy,
Yeah,
so mushy.
for
Really,
sure.
really hard
All right.
with 8 and 6. I really struggle.
Next question. Skeletons, zombies, or ghosts? What is your favorite ghoul?
Ooh, oh. Skeletons, zombies, or ghosts. Okay. I feel like in terms of like media, like what is the media that I enjoy the most with, one of these little dead guys? There's a musical called Ghost Quartet that is by Dave Malloy, who wrote Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. And it's a strange little musical, but in it there is a song called Any Type of Dead Person, where it is basically a very, very long list of different types of dead people, um, including skeletons, zombies, and ghosts. And it's a great song.
I'm gonna have to look it
The
up.
question is like, if you could be a kind of dead person, what kind of dead person would you be? And she says I'd be a ghost, and that's sort of the refrain.
I
It's a
love
cute
it.
song. It's a fun. There are some fun songs in this little musical, strange little musical. But I think, okay, so if I had to pick a favorite right now, I think I would pick Skeletons, but that's mostly just because of the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir,
Tell
which
me about
is
that.
about, oh my god, Scully, I
What is it
could talk
called?
about this forever, forever. The Locked Tomb
The
series.
Locked
It's a
Tomb.
book series, and like the description that I give to people who are unfamiliar with it is that it's about lesbian necromancers in space.
My mutual, who is in my D&D group for Westerly Academy, Knife Lore, my mutual Kara is obsessed with this, and she like makes like
Yes.
TikTok videos. I'll send you her page. She makes TikToks about this book
Yeah,
series.
send me her page. It's an amazing book series. It's so gay. It's so good. It's got all these necromancers in it, and skeletons are a pretty huge part of its iconography because like one of the main characters is a bone necromancer. So her specialty is making skeleton constructs.
I
I
love I
cosplay this character. Shout out to Harrow Hark.
well, that's how I noticed that Harrow the Ninth, the book, because I was like, I've seen
Yeah,
Harrow everywhere in her videos, and I
yeah,
was like, so I'll send it to you. You'll love it. I have to read this
yes,
now because so many of my
yeah.
friends read this and love it.
They're
Um,
so good.
I
Scully,
love
the
necromancer
world building
stories.
is phenomenal. They are fucking funny. These books are fucking funny and like narratively complex and really, really great characters. So gay. So gay.
That's what I've heard.
But they're like my favorite piece of fiction that I've read in like the last couple of years. My girlfriend and I are absolutely obsessed. We've cosplayed
Love
Gideon and
it.
Harrow. We've done another cosplay that I won't share because it's a bit of a spoiler, but there's literally the picture of her that I have on my desk as of us in this cosplay. It's just so fucking good. So you should read it and then we should make an episode about it. That would be
I
so cool.
absolutely will. And then maybe, oh my god, amazing. Mine is also skeletons for the simple fact that zombies are gross and ghosts freak me out. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and skeletons have like they've got like a dapper charm to them. Like the guy in like Corpse
Yeah.
Bride, Jack Skellington,
Yeah.
they're all usually very
Mhm.
like they're well dressed, and also the skeletons are like one of the better summons in Baldur's Gate 3. So I think I'm also like predisposed to just like the
Mm.
skeletons more. But I love
Mm.
I love necromancer stories because and I think like we've talked about like queerness being inherently like other in media and like how
Yeah.
sometimes like like queer people being associated with villains and like all these things where like necromancers being
Yes.
inherently associated with darkness and evil. I've always had like
And
a
death. And
and
death.
death. Yes. And
Yeah.
and that like
Death is
fascination with
yeah.
it. Yeah, inextricably linked. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's I love necromancer stories because I feel like when it's done right, it does something with the trope that like either you don't expect or it defies the trope or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I gotta look into that.
You will particularly as someone who grew up Catholic, you will get a lot out of the Locked Tomb series. There's a that author is really like really wrestling with Catholicism and a lot of the sort of like doctrines and like the death cult aspects of Catholicism.
Oh my
Um
god, yeah.
it's like really rich. It's so good.
I
It's
love
so
that.
good.
All right, I'll have to check it out. All right.
Mm.
Last question. What is the this one's from me. What is the best fan fiction that you've read recently? Have you had
So
time? Because
the
you're so
sad
busy.
answer the sad answer is that I haven't had any time because I'm so busy. But what I am doing is composing a list in the internet browser in my phone. I have a whole fuck ton of tabs open to mostly like Agatha Rio fix that I'm gonna read over Christmas during the 1 week a year when nobody bothers me. I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna read my smutty lesbian fan fiction, and it's gonna be great. And
I love
I'm
it.
so jazzed. I'm so excited about it.
Oh my
But
gosh.
if you're out there in the world and you have any honestly any women loving women fanfics that you think I absolutely must read, please DM them to me or to Skullie because I'm composing a Christmas time reading list and I love recommendations. So please, I beg, help me.
Fantastic. All right, I'll keep that in mind. Getting back into Arcane, I love Silco. I need to talk about Silco in some capacity on this channel because he is such a deliciously
Mm,
complex
mhm.
character. I mean, you know my
Yeah.
love of the tired, reluctant dad trope, and like
Yes.
I love him. I love how layered he is. But I read this one fanfic and it's like a reader insert because I'm shameless. The like reader is like a bartender at the last drop, which is the bar that's like owned by
Will you
Silco.
send this to me? Because that sounds
Yes.
like something I actually might really enjoy.
It's
Uh, that sounds good.
yeah,
I
it's
could
good.
fuck with that.
It has like a little bit it's a little bit like banter heavy, like some of the banter things where they keep going back and forth. I'm like, I'm gonna scroll through this. But
Oh,
other
see,
than
for
that,
me, that's like, I love the banter. Give me all the banter. Yes, character.
I love banter too, but sometimes it goes on for too long. It's like 12 lines. I'm
Oh,
like, "All
yeah,
right, we
fair
get
enough.
it. We get it."
Too
But
much.
but other than that it's really good. Like the writing is really good. It's funny, it's fluffy, it's cute, it's angsty, it's got smut in there and it's like really like
Yeah.
it's well written as well. So, I'll send it
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I would love. I probably am gonna fall into an arcane rabbit hole. The second I am done with my PhD applications, I'm gonna go deep into the arcane land, and it's gonna be great. And I'm gonna consume and be
It's
minimally
so
critical,
good. It's so
and
good.
then I'm gonna think about it after. But
Yeah.
my brain needs a break.
Yeah.
The
I get
problem
that.
this is the thing, like, don't be a media studies academic unless, you really love being critical, because it can be hard to turn that part of your brain off. And sometimes I just get to a point where I'm like, I would really like to be uncritical while watching this right now.
Yeah.
And
I get that
I just
too.
have to make the point to turn that part of my brain off. You know, poor me.
Poor you, your life is
Oh,
so
boo-hoo.
hard. Yeah, yeah.
My life is so hard. I have to
No.
analyze media. Boo-hoo.
No,
But
I get
yeah,
I get that. I get that too. I've found
it
that
is a little bit of a bummer.
yeah, I've found that watching media with someone who doesn't have that lens in that brain helps a lot. 'Cause, like, I'll
Yeah.
say something while, like, watching something with Shem, and he'll be like, "There's, like, explosions happening, like, we don't need to, like you don't need to, like, talk about that now. It's all good. We can talk about it after, it's fine, but, like, right now, it's like, there's shit going on."
Yeah.
So that helps me
It
a little
can be
bit.
nice to be reminded that, like, part of the pleasure of watching media is just, engaging with the sensory experience that's being, presented to you,
Yeah, 100%.
and that could be helpful.
Heading into our supporting character love fest. This is kind of open-ended for us. We didn't add
Yes.
anything for this section. Do you wanna talk about,
We
like,
did
Avatar:
not
The Last Airbender?
prepare. We can! I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I feel like I could talk about Uncle Iroh ad nauseum, but he's
Oh,
such a main cast character that, like,
yeah.
I don't have
I
to think I don't know, do you have thoughts?
I love Suki. Oh my god.
Suki!
I
Yes.
I love Suki. I love Suki bringing Sokka down a fucking peg when he comes to Kyoshi Island and thinks he's hot shit, and her, like, being a warrior, but also being someone who's, like, overtly, like, feminine too, of, like, her line of, like, "Yeah, I'm a warrior, but I'm a girl too." And, like, even though the line is, like, a little bit of, like Debbie Ryan.
I don't
It's a
know.
it's a little bit of, like, Debbie
Oh,
Ryan,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
putting
yeah.
the, like, hair behind the ear a little bit, but it is so real of, like, you can be feminine and also be really strong. Like, having that from a
Yeah.
young age was really important to me as someone who, like, I loved my dresses, but I also have, like, punched, like, a little boy for bullying someone on the playground. Like, having that, like, duality as a little girl was, like, pretty cool growing up. And then also just, like, her developing relationship with Sokka and being, like, emotionally available for him when he's, like, grieving his, like, ex-girlfriend who turned into the moon, and then her being, like, a badass who's in, like escapes from, like, a Fire Nation prison and, like, keeps fighting in this war, like, helps refugees. Like, she is such a fucking bad bitch. She is so
Mm,
cool. I love Suki.
yes. I love Suki. I mean, yeah, she's a great character. It's weird that, like, we don't get a whole lot of info about what happened to her,
Yeah.
in some of the later pieces of media, and I find that annoying and disappointing. While we're on a girlies tangent, I'm gonna talk about, like, May and Ty Lee for a minute
Yes!
because, okay, there are several things that I love about these characters. The first of which is that, like, they're so different.
Yes.
Each of them is so different, and
And
they're
they're
both so
best
different from
friends.
Azula, and they're best friends. Um, and you see them, like, really negotiate their positionality in the war and, like, their support of Azula and Azula's lack of support for them and the moment where they sort of, like, turn on her because they realize that she doesn't give a shit about them, and that she's, like, actively ruining the world is so brave. And I feel like we don't get that moment in media often enough where people where we see where thing that's happening right now where people are divesting from the people in their lives who have chosen over and over and over again to engage in shitty behavior that harms people.
Yeah.
Um and, like, all these like FAFO stories, fuck around,
Oh
find
my
out. I love that that's
god.
an internet term now. Ooh, so juicy. All these FAFO stories, they're about these, Trumpies, and nobody showed up to their wedding, and now she's, like, upset and experiencing for the first time, like, what it feels like to be left by people who, supported you.
Yeah.
The amount of stand these women who are divorcing their husbands for voting for Trump, that takes a lot of guts.
Yeah.
It does,
It's really
and it's
brave.
the right thing to do, but it also takes, like, so much courage.
Yeah.
And so, like, shout out to the real life Tylees and Mays who are, those of you who are leaving your Azula in this moment. Fuck yeah. All the power to you. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
All right, yeah. I think that's all we have for today.
Yes, that is all we have for today, friends. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us for today's Yapfest. Please yap about it to your friends. And until next Yap, we'll see you later.
Bye.